Welcome everyone. It's my pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Ben Livingston, who is a neon light sculptor, a National Endowment of the Arts Fellow, and a self-taught Renaissance man. This wouldn't have been possible today, of course, without our sponsors, WCNI, the beloved philosophy department, the anthropology department, the art department, the Ammerman Center for Art and Technology, and the music department, who all were kind enough to take a chance on a guy who is self-taught and everything, not an academic, but someone who I think is has something to teach us. Mind if I'm going to take this mic because I want. This one? All right. So why are all these departments from all these different disparate places sponsoring this event? I mean, that might sound a little all over the place, but what I think it means is that there's something for everybody here. Ben Livingston, he's a fine artist, an inventor, a cultural historian, and a singer-songwriter, and he's done all of this without a college degree. This isn't to diminish the value of a college education. We're all here at a college because we believe in the value of a college education. But I think what it means is that when we graduate, we don't stop learning. We don't have to stop learning. It doesn't mean just doing your homework. That means be curious. It means find something that makes you lose track of time. For you, that could be sailing the Mediterranean, or learning karate, or sitting down to finally read War and Peace. But whatever it is, you can find something that keeps you excited. You can find new passions. You can learn new tricks. Very few of us get to live our lives as an artist, but what we can do is find the art in everyday life. You can fall into a rabbit hole and chase it down until you get to the bottom of it, and then pop back up for air and look around to see what else looks interesting. I think it's never too late to learn new tricks, and I think the best person to teach us that is the person I'm honored to introduce today, which is Ben Livingston.
So you have to imagine I'm really famous, and I've been backstage, and then all the lights are coming on, and then I just come out here and I'm going to play you a song. So many ways to say the one thing that cannot be said. There's so many ways to live. Yeah, but there's just one way to be dead. And that's why I'm looking to get through these days just as smooth as a marble slips through silk. Gonna try to find something to give away that's as precious as a mother's milk. Are you headed for the promised land? Are you headed? Wow, was that a goose? Are you headed for the promised land? Or have you conjured up another plan? You can always count on dust and sand. But how about just paying attention to the task at hand and try to get through these days just as smoothly as a marble slips through silk. Gonna try to find something to give away that's as precious as a mother's milk. Must be getting kinda tired, dragging yourself across the forces of gravity. Oh, but it just hang on to the levity. Oh, so many ways to say the one thing that cannot be said. And there's so many ways to live. Yeah, but there's just one way to be dead. And that's why I'm looking to get through these days just as smoothly as a marble slips through silk. Gonna try to find something to give away. It's as precious as a mother's milk.
A big question for the philosophy department. It was for me, particularly, like literally, because when Riley contacted me, I wanted to know why. Like, why me? Like, I'm just this kind of schlep from Austin, Texas, and she wanted to. I said, Riley, why? Like, how'd you find me? And she said, well, it's kind of embarrassing, but I was watching this TV show, and I went, whoa, stop right there. There was this TV show, and it was called Extreme Cheapskates. And this Extreme Cheapskates show was so terrible that I was really curious how a bright young woman like Riley would ever be, watching a thing like this. Well, I thought, I suddenly had this picture of her as like this kind of like, it's kind of lazy gal sitting on her like torn up couch at college with a bong and like I'm laying on the table and. It's like, okay, now I kind of get it. But no, that wasn't the case at all. Riley is this really bright, can-do kind of gal that really wanted to bring something interesting to school. It wasn't educated, and I was that thing. So she wanted me to tell you a little bit about this show, and I'm going to read to y'all today because I can really ramble on. So I think I'm going to do a courtesy, and I'm going to read this to you. So when I got on the show, I called my ex-girlfriend. And I asked her to act as a frustrated kind of antagonistic mentor who couldn't believe how little I'd changed since she dumped me 20 years before. As a friend who wanted me to grow up, to climb out of my rut by having an art show at my house, which I responded enthusiastically, great idea, Amy. I'm going all out. I'm going to spend $4 on this. Now this was all for the show, I'll have you know. So our idea being that reality shows are so lame philosophically that we try to raise the bar. There you go. So we try to raise the bar. And exposing the reality of actual artists who struggle to make ends meet through eccentric, idiosyncratic means that many might call cheapskate. When actually, they're just being resourceful. And this cartoon-like figure of the artist dude, me, has found a way to keep creating by lowering his overhead. Sorry, I don't read well. In spite of social norms. We had a lot of fun tricking the producer into doing what we wanted. Unlike other episodes, this was quite the surreal portrayal in contrast. We were all amazed that it ever got aired. And for some reason that I'll never understand, over 9 million people have watched this thing, including Riley, Madden, who I think we should all give a great hand to. Thank you, Riley. So these are some scenes from the show, and I'm just like this cartoon character, this I put on this party at my house, and I have artist friends come over, and we make these they were the caterers, and they're cutting up T-shirts for napkins, and we get beanie weenies, and we put toothpaste. It was just so ridiculous, the whole thing. So it's not worth watching, but it is worth saying that it was a whole lot of fun to do, though it was quite brutal. So, moving on from this origin story of why I'm here, I'm mostly known for not cheap neon sculpture. And this is one of the last ones I've done. This is in Dallas. This is called The Answer, because the woman who asked me to do it, she said, I've got this really, this house I'm very proud of. It's this contemporary house, and it's on Oak Hill. It's on the cliff looking down, and I look straight out across the horizon at downtown Dallas, at the skyline. It's so beautiful at night. I was wondering if you might help me answer that. So this is called The Answer. It took a full year to do. So I'm also known for my songs, which are very inexpensive. And I have this little band, and we have so much fun. So swimming and taking underwater pictures at Barton Springs is another thing I do. So I'm just trying to let you know who I am. This is Barton Springs in Austin. Anybody ever heard of it? Oh, yeah, right. Look at that. So, yeah, my friends here, John and Maggie, John Sales, Maggie Renzi, they stayed at my house, and I was so excited that they might that I literally counted the steps to Barton Springs, hoping they would come stay. So I take these underwater pictures. I just have a great time doing it. That's Molly. We know all of the fish and the turtles in there. And the last thing I really enjoy doing is protecting the Barton Springs through environmental activism. And so this is, I'm on the board of a water watchdog for the whole watershed around Austin, which is crucial and very important. And so Save Our Springs Alliance, called SOS, has been an unwavering legal advocacy voice since 1992, and it has a great history. Anyway, we're defending this aquifer that is why Austin's there in the first place, and all of the wildlife around it. It's very meaningful to me, and it's nice to be this age to where I finally settled in and can act like a grown-up for the first time. So I come from this little town called Victoria in Texas. You can see some of the attractions around the town that make it so vital and interesting. And I grew up pretty much like, this is South Texas. It's got a real story of its own around it. And so I grew up like every other kid there, and hunting at a young age, and fishing with my dad. We had a boat, and we'd go down to Fort O'Connor. My mother was a very interesting character. She was crucial in sort of imparting my spirit, I would say. And we would walk around. My mother, she didn't read well. She's very dyslexic, and so her thing was all visual. And we would walk around, and we would we would just find beauty in everything. And you may know my mother, actually. Has anybody ever heard of a cartoon called Adventure Time? Yeah? Well, my mother was this little yellow elephant named Tree Trunks. Does that look familiar? And God rest her soul. Anyway, I spent hours in my room. I played guitar. I drew pictures. I'd play air guitar to the radio in front of imagining there were just huge audiences in the stadium, like cheering our band. I hated school. I just hated it. I was terrible. At school, I was very dyslexic. Like my mom, it was very hard for me. But my dad, he would take me down to the park, and on the Guadalupe River, he would, in this beautiful wild onion patch, he would read Kipling and Roald Dahl to me. And while he was reading, I was like this fidgety kid. What'd you say about this child yesterday? He couldn't hold still in a chair.
He danced in his chair.
He danced in his chair. I danced in my chair, and so while he was reading to me, I heard most of the story, but I would like dig down in the grass, and I'd look up, and I'd look through, and I would see beautiful things. But I had this sort of thing I would do with my eyes and my mind, and instead of focusing on what you would assume to see, which are those flowers, I really was interested in all the spaces behind it and in between, because they look like these really surreal, there were these make-believe places you could go. So I was so bad in school that I got real good at forging my report card, because I didn't want my parents to see it. So as you can see, I wasn't real good at it. And I was real good at turning you know, F's into B's, and I even turned a C into an E, which was like, complete, yeah. So my first day, my parents thought, oh God, this child, he really needs to learn how to learn. And so they sent me down the street to our Catholic school, St. Joe's Academy, and it was an all-boys school, and it was all brothers that taught us, and it was a real old-fashioned school. Of course, there was no air conditioning back then, and we had to wear these like shirts back then that like my mothers didn't have to iron. They felt like plastic bags. They were just awful. It was just so swelteringly hot in South Texas. So it's the first day of 5th grade. I'd been in 4th grade at a public school twice. They put me back once. It was really humiliating. And the teacher there is a woman, and her name is Miss Holcomb, our homeroom teacher, and she says, Ben, stand up, I want to introduce you to the class. And so I stand up, and she, is this right? Yeah. Stand up, I want to introduce you. And so she said, now Ben, class, Ben went to Shields Elementary last year, but Ben's a little different. Ben's a Jew. How about the power of AI? Let's hear it. Yeah. So this was literally, so I remembered, like, I thought my knees were going to buckle. I was just freaked out. And I remember so clearly thinking that these oppressively angled pictures of Jesus and Mother Mary, I really thought, like, Holocaust gas was going to come out of Jesus' eyes, and I was going to be dead any minute. So I got kicked out. Oh, wait, so there's a little song here. So I wrote this first verse about this. Well, they kicked me out of the Catholic school. They had their own way with the golden rule. I confess it's pretty hard to follow the boss when the only other Jew there is nailed to a cross. Okay, so so I got kicked out of St. Joe, actually for bootlegging liquor to the high school, which I got conned into in 5th grade. So yeah, that's a whole story you can ask me about in the Q&A afterwards. So they sent me to this high-tech like learning center in the mall. I was the only one there because everybody else was in school, and they had these machines called microfiche. Who's ever done any? Oh yeah. All us old people know that. So microfiche machines were, you know, that's how they would teach you how to read, and you'd roll these film reels, and it had literature on it. And now dyslexic people in general are pretty bright and real crafty and clever. We see the world in a different way. We have to assimilate information. Our brains are wired differently. So we have to assimilate information through not reading, but listening, and kind of you get this global sort of idea of patterns in the world. Maybe that's why I saw flowers like that. But, so this sucked really bad. So I learned, nobody was around because they wanted me just doing this thing all day. So I got in the top of the machine and I learned how to fast forward the reel. And so if you fast forward the reel, you don't get anything wrong. It only grades on the wrong answer. So I got a few wrong on purpose. And by the end of the week, the director calls my parents. He goes, oh my God, this child is reading 124 words a minute at 90% comprehension. Yeah, Patty said, some call it cheating, but I consider it proof of high intelligence. So I learned from doing stuff, and that's exactly what I like to do, and I did when I was a kid. And I was pretty entrepreneurial because I wanted money for stuff. And so I would find old crappy bikes, and I'd fix them up, and I'd sell them to the kids in the neighborhood. And you know, they'd wreck them or run them into telephone poles for fun, and I'd fix them back up and make more money giving them back to them. And so I became like the bicycle entrepreneur, and I would make enough money to buy pot and help send myself to camp in the summer. And that was this great boys camp that we would go to all the way to Canada in a school bus, and we'd camp out at every national park along the way. It was so much fun, all the way to Calgary. So my poor dad, he's so frustrated because he's a voracious reader. I mean, there's books all over our house that he's working on. He would just kind of have this circuit of chairs with books. And he was so frustrated with my lousy schoolwork that he finally figured out a solution. I have to say, of all the things my dad did, this was probably the greatest favor he ever did me. He turned me on to George Plimpton. Who knows, have everybody heard of George Plimpton? Great guy. Started the Paris Review with Peter Mathiasson, who wrote The Snow Leopard, really a great book about Nepal. And he was a participatory journalist. And he did this, he really pioneered that. And he was really great at, because he had such great street cred as a writer, he was really great at finding really interesting things to do. And he would fail at them miserably, but he would write so beautifully. And he was so funny and elegant about the way he'd write about it. And he wrote this book called Paper Lion that my dad had. And my dad got this like light bulb idea, and he showed me, he turned me on to George Plimpton. He said, you know, this guy, he does stuff. And my dad would say, oh, you can sit in a chair, you don't have to go anywhere, you can read about it, you can be anywhere in the world. I'm like, why would you do that when you can just go? So this guy just goes. And so my dad really put it together. And so he explains to me that I've got adventure in my blood because my great uncle, he's showing the newspaper this about my great uncle, Ed Schley, let's see, this was he tried to, the same year that Charles Lindbergh went to Paris, he and his buddy, William Brock, who was the actual pilot, they attempted to fly all the way around the world in this old Stetson plane. And they made it all the way to Japan, and President Coolidge called in, and they were so worried that he was going to crash that it was going to stunt aviation progress. So Coolidge called and begged him to not cross the Pacific. And it just ruined my poor great-uncle's life. I mean, this could have been it for him. But they bailed, and that was it. So I think right after that, they succeeded with a time of 59 hours and 7 minutes, just a year after that. So I was like, man, I think I'm equipped for this. So I thought, you know, I'm going to live my life in chapters. And and my one rule is anything's going to go, because my parents, they like had great ideas about things, but they never did anything. And it really frustrated me. And I thought, anything goes as long as nobody gets hurt. I will try anything. And I want to live my life in these chapters. It's a great way to go. So, but I had this roadblock. And that was, I was pretty socially awkward. In fact, I went to the library and I found this book called What to Say After You Say Hello. It's like, yeah. So, and here's what I learned. If anybody resonates with this, here you go. So it's a practical framework for overcoming shyness. Curiosity, number one. And this is like an exercise. Like ask one new question a day. Or initiative. Take one small action instead of thinking about it. You need drive, so you tie those actions to this, hopefully a solid foundation of your deeper values. Kind of this moral compass that keeps you going. Talent, maybe, but everybody's got it. They just have to find it. And when you learn your natural strengths, you just lean into it. And then above all, you got to sprinkle some chutzpah in there to get you to go through that door. So an icebreaker that I learned later was interview people. You don't have to think of stuff to say. Just ask questions, because most people love to talk. And if you pay attention, you're liable to learn a whole lot. I worked on framing crews. I went to Mexico and surfed and got all beat up doing it. I was a skateboard. I just loved skateboarding and broke my wrist right after. And I was on a roll, but I realized I needed money, to support my new appetite for adventure. So for an uneducated kid in South Texas, the only way you're going to make money is to go offshore and work in the oil field. So I lied my way into this job. This was the big chapter. So I went into this oil boss's office, and I saw a diploma from Texas A&M on the wall. And I said, oh, you're an Aggie too? And he got so excited, because Aggies really dig each other. I don't know, it's a thing. So I wasn't an Aggie. I wasn't anything. But I knew that this would really appeal to him. And I asked him all about his education, why he was out here. He was a petroleum engineer guy. And, so I went out there, and I got this job working 7 days on and 7 days off, paying my dues for quite a while. And these were 12-hour shifts from like either 12 at night to 12 noon or vice versa. And it was pretty brutal. And I really did not fit in at all. So this was 120 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico. And the reason I did this is because I needed money for an education. I knew I needed an education. I needed to get information in my head about the world and the way it works. So my first stop on the way to Europe, which was my destination, because I thought there's a lot of information in a very concentrated place in Europe. So my first stop was the Washington Project for the Arts. They hired me to come help build this performance space, stage, and a bookstore. And this is the best picture I can find of the actual place when I was there. It was on 4th and D. And this man named Stephen Antonakis, this neon artist, had done the front of it. And this was the first exposure I ever had to neon. And I'll tell you why neon mattered to me. Because I was this runt in high school. And like, all of my friends were like these Adonis surfer dudes and these gorgeous girlfriends that like pat me on the head. I just hated being cute. I wanted to be sexy, god damn it. So I could draw. That's one thing I could do, and this was my superpower. And girls liked drawing. So I thought, this is like an electric Crayon. This is like, I could draw with light. I mean, come on. So that was my goal. I mean, most people have these artistic, trajectories that are based on other desires, but I really just needed a girlfriend. So I got a girlfriend who I adored in Washington, D.C., and this was the first time in Washington, D.C. was the first time that I had any kind of political or cultural awareness, ever. I mean, as South Texas, there is none. I mean, the town I come from, like, they think Trump's a Democrat. It's so conservative. And I had no idea. There was just complete unawareness about it all. So my girlfriend Jody, she worked for NARAL, National Abortion Rights Action League. I mean, she was this like liberal Jewish girl from Antioch, and I was just like, wow, look at this is a prize. I'm just going to learn so much from this woman. So I asked her parents. We go to New York, where she's from, and I literally asked her parents if she could come to Europe with me. And sure enough, they said yes. I mean, she was a grown woman. So we fly to Luxembourg, and I buy this crappy old car, Datsun, for $400. And instead of going on a train with a bunch of kids, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go wherever I wanted to go. So I had this car, and I brought a roll of tools because maybe I could fix it if it broke down, which it did in Paris. And we drove all the way down and took a ferry to Corfu. You can see our route. And we were so stone broke by the time we got to Greece. It was my birthday in Athens, my 25th birthday. And we were so poor that for my birthday present, she stole a really pretty shirt off of a clothesline and gave it to me. Anyway, so we come back to the United States, and she was trying to get into law school. She had done her LSAT, and she was waiting to get in. She wanted to go to Columbia. I'm like, I want to go home. Texas kids want to go home. We get homesick. I don't know why, actually, now. But Texas was really great back then. So she said, there is no way, absolutely no way, I'm going to Victoria, Texas. Like, forget it. I'll go to Austin. And I went, oh, man. I went to Austin kicking and screaming. I was not excited about it. But because it was a city, I don't really like cities. And so we ended up in Austin. Kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies. We were broke. My parents called us the refugees. We got this, I don't know how we got an apartment, but we did. And then about a year later, it didn't work out so good, and we parted ways. And I was getting this sort of career anxiety. I was thinking, God, I remember my grandfather hearing that he would have these like anxiety problems when he got out of college. Like, what am I going to do for a living? And he would stay up and he would wake up and stay up all night worrying about it. I thought, I guess it's time that I need to stay up all night and worry about what I'm going to do. So I did. And my grandmother died shortly after that. She left me $5,000. And now I can go to this neon workshop school up in Wisconsin, which I'm so excited about. And this 6 weeks kind of teaches you how to be kind of a really second-rate apprentice level kind of glass bender. That's what they call it. So after an apprenticeship, I start my own shop. I did get an apprenticeship. And I started getting really great jobs around town because I had worked for a little newspaper called the Austin Chronicle in Austin. And I worked in the advertising department. I started the classifieds in that thing. And I learned how to chase down clients, and all the other neon people in town were total stoners, and they'd never make it to appointments. So by attrition, I would get these jobs, and I made friends with these people. There's anybody here, the Continental Club in Austin? It's a very famous club, and Broken Spoke's another one. And so I got these jobs. I went to Austin City Limits, and they'd heard about me, and they wanted to talk with me about maybe doing a set. And I was so excited that I said, I tell you what, if you let me do this set, I'll go on your PBS auction site and I'll sell the set pieces like a used car salesman, and I'll pay this set back. So they hired me, and so I did a set. I designed a set and built it for Chet Atkins. I did one for George Jones. It was like a whole roadhouse thing. It was really fun to get cars and motorcycles and build this whole roadhouse. And then my mom told me that she had met this famous neon artist who's actually the guy that did the front of the WPA. And she said, my son does neon, he's doing that. And he goes, oh really? Well, I'm going to Dallas. Why don't you, to do this big commission at Bell Telephone, why don't you have him call me? Well, I never got his number, but I heard that he was staying at the Stoneleigh Hotel. And so I went to the Stoneleigh Hotel, and I knew what he looked like from books and stuff, and so I just sat in the lobby and waited for him. And I had this crummy old Volvo station wagon that like blew smoke out of the back, and he came through the elevator, and I jumped up and I stuck my hand out. I said, Mr. Antonakis, my name's Ben Livingston, and I'm here to, you met my mom in New York. He goes, oh yes. I said, I'm here to drive you wherever you want to go. I'm at your service for the next 2 weeks. And he, you know, as any New Yorker, probably thought I was out of my mind. But we had a kind of a nice time, and I was very concerned about how do you make it from ground zero, where I am, wanting to become an artist with that stature. Like, I was just so fascinated, and I was hungry for it. And the last day I was there, I asked him that. He said, just do your work, son. So I finally saved up enough money doing these signs to do my own work. And the first thing I did was this anti-war protest neon piece in Austin. And it became a big landmark like the minute we turned it on. It was kind of, if you went to Austin and you came out of the airport and you asked a taxi driver to show you things of interest, this would definitely be on the list. So here's what it looked like. And let's see. So we won an International Lighting Design Award and actually beat the Statue of Liberty with this silly thing. Like my friend said, who helped me, he did the electronics. He said, we won an Oscar for a home movie. So this was the...
Move your cursor.
Huh?
Move your cursor.
What?
Out of the way.
Oh, okay. So this was how it was made, and I'm so glad that I documented it. We made this little video, and this was the entry for this international competition. So he's downloading this EEPROM chip with all of these drawings that I had done, I think 256 drawings, and he downloaded that in digital form, and now he's making a circuit board that he was going to build. I mean, this was serious state-of-the-art in 1986. This was a big deal, but nobody really cared until it turned on. And the reason why we did this is because I didn't want this jerky, the goal was to not have a jerky, like on-off kind of neon thing, but to actually have what cartoonists call a rate. And if you have a rate, it's like things move more organically. And so that's what this computer was able to do. And those EEPROM chips that he programmed, if you've ever seen a player piano, it's kind of like the paper reel. So it has this time, it's called a clock generator. So here it is, this flower comes up, this is in front of my shop, this flower's about this high, and this is showing you the child's view of the end of the world, basically. This jet rocket comes over and, uh-oh, look what's going to happen. Oh no, it drops this bomb, blows up the flower. It's the only movie I've ever made, John. So it blows up the flower, and then it's over, and it's, you know, and that's it. But then 10 seconds later, the flower comes back on, and it cycles. And it did this cycle every day for 22 years, this thing went. It went, you know, in wartime, in, out of wartime, through nuclear threats, out of nuclear threats. So this was my first real big break. And so you can see, like, the different So the first one is the Philadelphia, it's the Benjamin Franklin Bridge. So all of these were like huge budgets for lighting. And this is the Philadelphia Bridge, and then the Baha'i Temple in New Delhi. This Lotus Temple is so beautiful. And then the Indianapolis War Memorial, they run this very sophisticated, expensive lighting scheme. And we were in Minneapolis to receive the award, and then they talked and bragged about how expensive it was. And then I got up and I didn't know what to say. I was just following what they were saying. I said, well, we had a budget of $387.64, and we were able to build this thing. So people seemed charmed. So the next thing, so now I'm kind of getting some traction doing what I really felt like I was born to do. And I've always kept journals, It's a really great thing to do if you don't. And I wrote and wrote and wrote in the mornings. And then I would come up against some philosophical problem that I just really felt like I needed to solve. And writing wouldn't do that for me, but painting would. And I would just go for days and nights working on these paintings. They probably don't look like much, but they were very meaningful, and they would help me through these issues I had. So they're pretty interpretable, so I'll just leave it to you. So that's The Desperate Freeman. This was about relationships, how trailer houses attract tornadoes. I'm a lightning rod for neurotics. And this is a story about, I got an appointment with a real famous art dealer in New York, in Soho in the 90s, and Soho was pretty hot. And this guy's name was Ivan Karp, and he had a gallery called the O.K. Harris Gallery. And he's why you've heard of Andy Warhol and a lot of others, Keith Haring. I was just amazed that I was able to get this appointment. And I went, he had no interest in my neon, zero. But he liked these paintings. And he said, so, Ivan Karp is this gruff old guy, he said, so, let's go to your studio, I like this. And I go, Mr. Karp, my studio's in Austin. He goes, oh, Jesus Christ! I can get anything I want within 15 minutes of here. You come back to New York, you move here, call me. So I went home, and I had this huge dilemma. Like, do I need to, like, go to New York and bite the apple and do the thing and get famous? But I was so happy at home. I had so many friends, and I had this great little place on the lake that I had bought for like nothing, and I had this little cabin on it. And I just decided I wasn't going to do that. So this painting helped me decide that, and this is the title of it, and I sent a picture of it to Ivan Karp, and I never heard back from him. So this was an incredible mentor of mine. Her name was Madeline O'Connor. She was my mom's best friend. She was an amazing artist. Isn't that a great picture of her? She would do what I would consider an environmental minimalism. She was just so into nature, and I just adored this woman. Plus she was really pretty. So I wrote this song about her. This is for you, Madeline. I want me some immediate gratification. If I don't get me some soon, I'm gonna take myself another long vacation. It's been day in and day out as I gaze in and I gaze out, yeah. She was a searching vine. She was married to the king. I once saw her reaching for heaven through the ways that she looks at things. Hop up on that tuna fish canyon. I bet you can see about 100 miles across that dried up Coletta Creek bed that's cracked into a billion times. She got me to look a little. She got me to look a little bit deeper in. Hungry for a midnight snack. When I'm
Don't take that monkey off of my back. I'm still trying to turn a cheap trick, yeah, I'm still hoping to get rich quick. She got me to look. She got me to look a little. She got me to look a little bit deeper in. Fleming Prairie Grass still does that hula dance. And the South Texas breeze so fine. I'm here to tell you all that Madeline O'Connor, she was a friend of mine. She got me to look. She got me to look a little, yeah. She got me to look a little bit deeper in. I'm so glad I had a chance to write Madeline a thank you letter before she died. Patty and I were down in Oaxaca City, Mexico, in this old Zapotec market. Business as usual, just like it's been for hundreds and hundreds of years. We were sitting under this shade tree and looked up to see the only beam of golden sunlight making its way down through the leaves and the branches of this old tree. Landing right in front of us on this old black Oaxacan clay rosary. Well, if you don't know Madeline's artwork, you know exactly why she came to my mind. And if you know me, you know I'm a big old moth to fire. So I had to get up and take a little closer look. And upon further examination, I noticed a radiant explosion of rainbow colors dancing all around those bees. It was red and green, blue and aqua and gold and orange and magenta and pink and this beautiful green. It was backed up against this purple magenta. I want you all to know that every time I think I'm going to sing this song out in public, I go in my closet and get my prettiest green shirt and this old purple vest that me and my buddies got in Kathmandu, Nepal. Because when I put those two together, it reminds me, those two colors, reminds me of that special place and time when Madeline, she got me to look. She got me to look a little. Yeah, she got me to look a little bit deeper.
Victoria. So I took a job at a neon shop. I got another lucky strike, and I took a job that was offered to me in New Zealand, and I discovered something there. It was really special. It was these phosphorescent neon compounds, and this is what they look like. Neon tubes have this stuff in them that's made from that, and you could see it with an ultraviolet light. You could see those colors, kind of like a black light, you know, for posters and stuff. But this is a different one. It's called shortwave, and it picks up all of these vibrations from these different minerals. And so I started monkeying around with it. I thought, well, maybe I can put them in a tube. And I started experimenting and playing with these things. And here's for all you nerds. This is the compounds that they actually are. So, oh, well, wait a minute. So this is what I would make with it. This is what I would make with these. And so instead of it, a neon being sort of like this like really bright thing that like in Las Vegas where the whole city's lit up with this stuff, I just thought I could, suddenly I had this like cosmos inside of a tube that's like the size of your thumb, where all of these different colors create this beautiful opalescence. And suddenly, I didn't know it, but I had invented this whole new color palette for neon. And this is kind of the origin of the whole reason I'm here, is to explain to you how happy accidents can happen all the time if you're just out doing stuff. So that allowed me to make things like this. This is the piece this piece right here, this was my final report from the NEA fellowship, and it's hanging in their office in Washington, D.C., as far as I know, still. This is a piece at the Bass Concert Hall at University of Texas. This piece is about 25 feet long, and I could, using those phosphors, I could really do some interesting stuff. This is a piece I did for Mick Jagger. Isn't it sexy? That's in his apartment in New York. So, suddenly I'm really getting traction with this stuff, and I get this fellowship, and they give me a little bit of money, and I'd been in my studio like a hermit for so long that I decided that I would take this trip with my friends who were going to Nepal. And so I just thought we were going to go for a hike in the, kind of a little hike in the woods. It's going to be this like 3-week, 200-mile walk. Man, when I got there, I had no idea what I was going to see. I mean, suddenly my sort of homogeneous world of the United States was turned inside out, and I was in the middle of a world where life and death was as common as anything, and everything was happening right in front of us. So this is, just a little butcher shop, little home. And then we went walking through this exquisite countryside, and through the Himalaya for about 3 weeks. And then we got back, and I thought we'd kind of seen everything. We were all kind of like confirming. It's like, God, we've just seen, in the streets of Kathmandu, it's just, there's elephants walking across the street, and there's, it's so loud, it's this cacophony, it's just insane. But underneath that, there's this like real psychic calm. It's really odd and interesting. And I believe it's because they have this Buddhist world where, they get another chance. We're pretty nervous because we're not going to get another chance to come back. And so it's just the opposite of here, where it's kind of calm on top, but we're all just kind of like knotted up underneath. It's just the opposite. So at the end of this trek, we go into town, and we're thinking we've seen everything. We get taken to the Ghats, which is where they do public cremation. And this is at the Pashupatinath Temple in Kathmandu. So you can see these are funeral pyres, these flat platforms. So they'll take dead bodies and they put them in these gauze bags, and they have them laying down the stairs feet first into this river. Now this is a holy little tributary that goes into the Ganges. And it's really trashed out, which is so ironic to see it like that, but that's just not something they consider as a problem. So while your dad is there, his feet are in the water, and there are these beautiful colored powders all over him. I don't know what it signifies, but they're building a pyre up there out of logs, and then they put thatch on top, and then they lay the body on top of it, and they put thatch on top of that. And the oldest son's job is to light the parent's head on fire. So this thing, I mean, there's no words for the way this feels to be around there, especially when you have a navy blue sweater on, and ashes from a human's life is like landing all over you. You just like, man, I mean, it's all there. It was just the most incredible experience. And then they sweep the bones off into this river where, children are playing in it while mothers are, doing laundry. It's just like, wow, it was incredible. So I'm just writing these journals. Like it's not because of Plimpton, I just am compelled to do it. So I've done it for years, and this is a picture kind of recently of a lot of them. And just to kind of show that it's really a great thing to do. Did anybody keep journals or diaries or anything? Anybody? Well, you should. It's a really great thing to show your kids when you get old and die. Or look back when your memory's as bad as mine. You get to go, oh God, I went there, really? So I get home from Nepal, and I don't know if that's a line from a song, but it's good. Because that's exactly what it felt like. It's like I'm home and I have never been here before. Everything was different. Like my soul had twisted. And I don't really know a lot about that, but I had some sort of opening. And so all of my artwork completely changed. So this is the kind of work that makes me satisfied. This is like an old drafting set box that I found, and I put grapevines in it, and I'm just like, wow, this is exactly what I need to be doing. And so, paintings like this. And this was a meaningful thing. This was this is a memorial for a woman's 17-year-old daughter who had died of ovarian cancer. So I'm not just making cool-looking things anymore. Things are mattering now. This is a piece for a woman, the Cherokee chief Wilma Mankiller, who's the chief of the Cherokee Nation. This is a medicine wheel, so it signifies the 4 directions. This is a piece I did in the convention center in Austin, and this is like this Mobius strip. It's kind of this I can't really explain it, to tell you the truth. So while I was reminiscing with friends that went to Nepal, we were talking about how trashed out and this environment was with all of these like water bottles and Coke bottles that these porters would bring up, and how it's just a shame because their industry is tourism, and they don't realize that if it's trashed out, like tourists don't want to see that. So we decided we resolved to try to clean it up. So this was my first real thought of any kind of environmental activism. So we decided that these these porters, they go up the mountain with these huge loads, and they're like the pickup trucks of Nepal. And a lot of times they just have like flip-flops on. It's just amazing. They'll walk for 2 weeks with this stuff to deliver it to these tea houses way up high. And we thought, well, they pay them and then they just walk home with an empty basket. And we thought, well, why can't they get paid to return a bunch of this trash to a recycling center that we can set up in Kathmandu that takes stuff to India and China? So we get together, we really form this thing, and it really starts happening. And my friend Jeff Ragsdale and I, we went and did this thing, and it was really gaining traction until there was a real rift in the royal family. There was this like mass murder of the royal family, and everything kind of shut down. Anyway, so that was kind of the end of that, but it was a good run, and we had to go in order to kind of tie together these recycling centers. So on the way back, generally I pay for the Himalaya with my stomach, because every time I go, I get some parasite, and I'm just, half the nights I'm there just yakking away. And so on the way back, I'd lose like 10 or 15 pounds in Nepal, and on the way back, you want to eat some good food, so we stopped in Thailand. And these things, these little doll houses on pedestals, they were everywhere. We're like, what are those things? And we found out there were these things called spirit houses. And so I returned back in 2007 after my wife Patty and I went there on a gap year, and I started cultivating relationships with people. She wasn't interested, but I cultivated these relationships with people who would later be my interpreters and guides when I went back to, because I couldn't find a book, and I thought, I'm going to write a book on this because it's so interesting. So this was the sort of the route I took. I chose Myanmar, Burma, which is the most interesting, Thailand, and Laos to do my research in. So I started to do it in a blog form because it's so immediately gratifying. You can put pictures in it, you can just keep writing. And I would write for, like 7 or 8 hours a day. It was just so satisfying. So what's a spirit house, you might ask? So spirit houses are miniature, they're temple-like little shrines, and they are there to protect you by enhancing, here I'll just read it because I'm getting tongue-tied. So they're miniature temple-like shrines placed outside of homes and businesses to shelter local spirits of nature and ancestors. And I love this because American Indians, they're really into that too. And like ancient cultures still protect nature and ancestors. In this country, we don't seem to care a whole lot about either one, and it's a really sad thing to me. So they give daily offerings of food, which is, I'll show you what spirit food looks like, flowers and drinks to keep them content, because you do not want to piss these spirits off. They will make your life a living hell, apparently. So it's all about prosperity and harmony by taking care. So they're modeled after these Wat temples in Thailand. Aren't they beautiful? They're so opulent. And this is what they make. This is a little Sampropong spirit house. And you can see the spirit of ancestors and your helpers and your animals there, and these are all to be protected. So these are ancestors here. They make these little dolls. And so here's Spirit House food. Patty told me not to bother with all this, but I just want you to see it. Is this interesting to y'all? I can move on to something else. Okay. Okay, so here's what spirits eat. This is like their 5-course dinner. They put out these things every day. It's rice, chicken, bean paste, which actually I took one out and ate it. I'm surprised I didn't go to hell. And tea and then water. So this is like their main staple. The other one is sacrifice, which is really gross, but they figured out a way around it. And instead of doing that so much, this is a very Hindu thing, I believe. Instead of doing that, they have decided that the spirits are cool with Fanta soda instead of animal blood, which is so civil of these spirits. It's just really great. It was nice of them. So these things are everywhere. Like if you travel around Southeast Asia, you will see these things all over the place. And I was so charmed by them because as a kid, I loved building dollhouses for my sister and all her friends because I liked making things and I enjoyed architecture. So I just loved seeing them. They were in the poorest parts of town. And everybody's like, as they say, they just didn't want to give up the ghost. They were like, whatever, maybe they could salvage some sort of goodness out of this for their life. They were in laundromats. Can you see it there? They were on boats, and they all have names and they all have stories about how they work and what they are. Even the colors on that canopy, that's a form of the spirit house. They're in elevators. They're in taxi cabs. They're wrapped around trees. These Nang Mais are really interesting because they were doing a clear cut down in southern Thailand, and the environmentalists sent Buddhist monks down there to wrap these trees and consecrate them as holy trees. All clear cutting stopped. It was such a great, I wish we could do that here. Anyway, so I was excited to come home. I had 35,000 words and about 1,000 photographs, and I was really excited about coming home and putting this thing together. But I'm this dyslexic kid, and this was way too hard. Anybody that's written a book, I bow to thee. It's just the hardest, most incredible journey. I just can't even imagine. But what I could do, I would walk by this manuscript. Is that what you call it? In paper? A manuscript who somebody liked enough, an editor, to edit it pro bono. It had oomph to it. Somebody liked it. And I would walk past it, and I just couldn't even look at it. And I just thought, I would sit down, my guitar was on the couch, and what I could do was write a song instead. It was a great distraction. So I wrote songs, and I got with this guy, Bob Livingston, who played with do you remember the Los Gonzo band with Jerry Jeff Walker?
Yeah.
I met him in Bangkok, and we palled around for several days. In fact, he was with the State Department playing gigs all around at embassies, and he asked me to come play kazoo with him at the Thai ambassador's house. It was really fun. So I called him, I said, Bob, teach me how to have a band, because I can have this gig at the Continental Club if I want it. The guy that owns it said he wants me to do an art show up there, and hey, it's my opening, do whatever, and it's during South by Southwest, so if I have a band, I have 11 songs, maybe we could play. And he's like, all right. So he teaches me how to have a band, and he gets a drummer, and we just have the best time. And so I finally felt pure oxygen on that stage, and I've been doing it ever since, and I just love it. And so this was the best diversion from writing a book that anyone could ever have. So I'm riding my bike to a gig a couple years later, and all of a sudden I passed this thing called a Hoffheinz house. And these houses were built by a blacksmith named Hoffheinz, who built them as affordable housing for emancipated slaves back in the 1900s, for working class families. And now they were a very important piece of African American history in Austin, and they represent both early freedom communities and the city's housing inequities, and they should be preserved. And I'm riding my bike past this thing, and I'm hearing this material screaming in agony. And I stop, and I something's really wrong with this. Like, I feel it on this really visceral level. Like, there is something really fucked up here. And so I go to the foreman, and I go, can I come back in my truck and get some of these materials? I don't know. I was just like, I was following my own, I just, it's like words were coming out of my mouth. I didn't even know what they were. It's like, can I please come and get this stuff? And I was so compelled to do it that I come back and I got materials. And, I mean, my problem with this is I could imagine all of these generations that had come up in this house from the incredible opportunity that this emancipated slave would have gotten to actually be a freedman and buy this house. And now his family's grown up, and there's generations later, and this thing is now literally going up in dust, and it's going to the landfill. And I just thought it was the most disrespectful thing I have ever, like, as a material-driven person, I guess, this was so occurring to me in such a deep way that I got these materials, and I took them home, and I was just led to make these sort of cradles out of them. And I remembered that, it's like, what am I going to do with these? And I remembered, well, these spirit antennas I used to make with my neon. I would put them in friends that had, that were in hospice sometimes, and their family would just be in there with them while they were dying. And they would take it, it really was a container of this experience of dying. And they would, after the loved one was gone, they would take this with them, and it really had that in it. And that, like what people would tell me, it's like, every time we see it, it's like, so I thought, well, you know, maybe the vitality of the energy of that neon could really revitalize this material and somehow bring out like a spirit house. And it's this weird, obtuse way to kind of come up with a spirit house. So all of these artifacts and things, I would just use them and I would build these things. And so I would let the neon sort of respond to the materials. And so you can see like wallpaper there. This is what they looked like. And they kind of took off. This is called the Cesar Chavez Rainbow Generator. So they really kind of took off to the point where a museum, a fine arts museum in San Angelo got in touch with me. And they said, okay, come on up, we want to see you. And by the way, you can stay and we'll put you up in this Fort Concho. It's this Calvary installation that was 150 years old. And the director of the museum, he said, yeah, we'll put you up there. And by the way, it's haunted as hell. I hope you're okay with that. I went, well, spirit house, I guess so. So every little noise all night long, I'm springing out of bed. And upstairs from where I'm staying, the general's daughter, little Edie, had died of typhoid on her 13th birthday. And these paranormal experts would tell you that they would go in and they would see her like on the floor, this ghost of her playing jacks, and then she'd look up and have like creepy smile and she'd go back playing jacks. Or you would hear her father's hobnail boots going up and down the stairs. So the next day I'm totally exhausted, but I have this idea. It's like, let's get some paranormals to like mic Edie's room and show the world, like by transmitting this signal to this glass building across the street from the museum, we would have this array of LED lights that would activate with any sound, and they would shoot across this building, and you could watch it from the museum. Well, you know, it could be Edie's jacks, it could be the general's. It could be the general's boots. It could be the air conditioner turn on. It could be a mouse farting. It could be anything, and this thing would activate. So everybody who doesn't get to go in the house can have these great arguments about whether it's real or not, and it's just so fun. Well, it was kind of ambitious, and it didn't work out. So the director and I conceived this like virtual traveling exhibit idea, built from local artifacts and stories and my neon spirit houses. And this would be like where past and present and the future sort of converge. And this would be a reflection of the community. So this was an essay that we came up with, and I think how are we on time? I don't know. Are y'all having fun? That's all that matters. Okay. So this is what we wrote as the entrance to the show. Our memories often feel ghost-like. If you're wondering why I'm reading so well, it's because I practiced this. I've read this about 500 times. Our memories often feel ghost-like. Photos, places, and objects summon joy, sadness, or unease as we struggle to recall what time has erased. Historians and archaeologists try to explain the past, but much of it resists easy understanding. As David Lowenthal wrote, "The past is a foreign country." We can glimpse history through books, images, and artifacts, yet never fully live the world our ancestors knew. This is not a history exhibit, but an act of remembrance. By bringing together objects and stories from San Angelo, the Concho Valley in West Texas, it invites us to feel the presence of forgotten lives, to honor their challenges, and to recognize how those who came before us shaped the world we live in today. So we filled the room with all this stuff from Fort Concho and around San Angelo, and what was really cool is all of the people, a lot of people from the town recognize this stuff. And so instead of being this sort of erudite museum where we're going to bring in things from the outer world to educate our people, this place was like a giant selfie of the community, and they were really digging it. So it was a real success. It was so much fun, and I was culling out a lot of stuff, but this one's so fun that you have to see Miss Corinne Baker of San Angelo. She's wearing this promotional, so this thing's literally made out of windmill blades. Isn't that awesome? I'd love to know this woman. So I went out in the country in this big cotton field, and they showed me this barn. They said I could just have my way with it. So I got a lot of interesting materials from it, because this thing was over 100 years old, so it had a lot of that mojo in it. And I started looking at how, I was kind of studying it and seeing how, how things could go, and, sort of, as I've heard John say, you just go to that place, and I'm just sitting in there for days, and I take my lunch out there and just sit in this. I hear the wind blow, and I hear this like squeaking, like hinge of this door, and the tin kind of banging with the wind. And so I make these cradles, and I really let the neon respond to this material. And these are the 5 pieces that I made for the show. I bring in stuff from the past that I still have for the show. There were about 30 pieces in the show. But these were the San Angelo pieces, and this is my favorite. This is called The Whale. And so this is from an old barn door. And so, I'm supposed to sing you a song that Riley asked me to sing. Is anybody from the art department here? Bunch of losers. Okay. So this is a song about, for anybody that's aspiring to be an artist. Well, these art school folks suffer life's cruel jokes that keep us from finding ourselves. Paralyzed by romance keeps us from our own dance while we're trying to be somebody else. Well, we're sucked in by the mystique and hammered by critique. It's a cauldron that's a big centrifuge. And if you got no ambition, you was only tuition that just wound up singing the blues. How was that, Margaret? Smart fools from art school. Oh, you think you wanted dead or alive, sporting all the latest fashion instead of just doing your life's passion. Well, I wonder what's behind your disguise. Jean-Paul Sartre was at the Department of Art, but he just could not find his way out the door. So he could fight it in Yosef Boys, who made a terrible noise as he threw a handful of lard on the floor. Well, you see, now as he picked up a pelt, he described how he felt. You really got to be in the art department to know what this song's about. For reasons Sartre could not ignore, he said, if I were Eugene, I'd just hike up my old blue jeans and I'd try not to be such a bore or a smart fool from art school. Oh, you think you wanted dead or alive? Well, the real existentials are not drinking coffee down at Winchell's, no, they're with Mojo, picking at the teeth with a knife. Marcel Duchamp had him a nudist camp because he just loved playing chess with all them naked girls. Oh,
and others they were mending all those clothes that their bachelors had stripped bare. Oh, and if they looked kinda cold, it's just 'cause old Michael Tracy done stole all of their blood and their pubic hair. You really gotta be in art school for this. Art from art school. Oh, you think you want it dead or alive? Sporting all the latest fashion instead of just doing your life's passion. Well, I wonder how you'll ever survive. So if academia calls from its echoing halls, well, now don't be ashamed or afraid from this stupid old song. Take it therewith. Maybe you can start your own myth. Yeah, that is, if you got the ball to be a smart fool from art school. Oh, you think you want it dead or alive? Oh, smart fool from art school. Whoops. Always trying to separate from this world. Well, why not be a part? Let this life be the fine art, yeah. Quit acting like such a bunch of little old squirrels. I know my voice, it ain't as good as Merle's. You don't have to be a drum major at 212. Go on out there and have yourself a good time instead. Ooh. There you go. Marco from Art School. So we're wrapping it up here, and I want to show you kind of this little video that a friend of mine made about. Oops! Oh no! Spoiler alert! Let's see if I can get this to work. This is
I
about.
decided that it's really a great thing to make the walls of a museum porous. You go into the community where the art center of the museum is, and you find all this information about it, and you give it back to the community. I get the fun part of being this total amateur anthropologist, and I get to make a funhouse mirror reflection of any community I go into. So we start the show with the Waco Suspension Bridge. It was built in 1870 by Roebling, who made the Brooklyn Bridge. I found this guy, Skip Rawls, a sculptor in town. He had a piece of the original 1870 cable, and we created this idea together, and he built this from scratch, really. This is all Waco's old signs, all this nostalgia. People come in, they go, oh, my cousin's, his father, he worked at that Firestone, and people really start connecting. And that's the whole idea of art, really, is you want to create a connection. This is kind of the underserved community. It starts talking about the African-American community that were slaves here at one time, and they had some really heinous lynchings here. This letter is to W.E.B. Du Bois, who started the NAACP. April 3rd, 1923. Enclosed you will find clipping from a local Texas paper. This Negro, an ignorant and poor man, has been charged with all the murders committed in and around Waco, Texas during the last 14 months. Won't you have your organization investigate this case and see if some sort of justice cannot be rendered? She signed it Southern White Lady. This is a guy named W.C. Brand. He called himself the iconoclast. And W.C. Brand would write these scathing articles. He didn't like Baptists and he didn't like Baylor. So he'd write these articles, and inevitably he'd get beat up in the street. A friend of his was the banker in town. And he gave him a pistol and said, you know, just in case. And so he wrote this really revealing article about a young woman at Baylor. And this guy came out of the alley at night, her father, and boom, shoots W.C. Brand. Brand takes that pistol, shoots him back. Both of them were dead by the next day. There's the gun. That gun shot somebody. Have you ever heard of the crash at Crush? It's one of the greatest publicity stunts ever. This publicity agent guy, he set up this engagement, this event. I think he sold 40,000 tickets for $2 a piece, and this was 1896. People came from all over the country, and they were decommissioning steam locomotives back then. They didn't know what to do with them, so he got two of them, and he staged this crash. They backed these trains up like a mile or two. They were going fast when they hit each other, and nobody thought about the boilers and how they were basically bombs. And it killed, I think, 4 people and injured a whole lot of others. So here it is afterwards. Isn't this just the craziest thing you've ever seen? Waco was the first town in Texas to get a prostitution license. This was Molly Adams. She was the madam. And these are doorbells. So if you had a favorite hooker, you could like ring her doorbell and she come get you. These are the license and the tax, I believe they're tax rolls. So it says how much they paid in taxes. What I really love is connecting things. I just love it. And so this is how I can connect a community. That's my main goal in this part of the show. After that happens and you sort of have this museum in your head, I take you into the other part of the show, which is how I've incorporated my work, which is this neon that has kind of a vitality to it, and I'll take parts of buildings or things that I find to have some sort of energy to them that's sort of lost. The reason all of this sort of came to me is I had been to Southeast Asia, and there's things that are called spirit houses. Hopi is what they're called. The main impetus of them is that people still respect the spirit of nature and the spirit of their ancestors. And those spirits live in these little houses. And so I thought, well, if I build these cradles, it's like the spirit has sort of been knocked out of this stuff. But if I include this vital force, this neon, with this little structure, maybe it will somehow steward these spirits back into some kind of life. The second part of the show takes all of this nostalgia and all this sentiment that will develop in you from seeing this to get you ready for that. This is the body, and that's the spirit. This piece of sheetrock that has this quote on it was at their old art center, which was at the community college. And it says, "Art is the only way you can find yourself and lose yourself at the same time," by this guy, Thomas Merton. I got a saw and I just cut this out of the wall. This piece of sheetrock had no life. This is what gives it its vitality. So it's kind of like going to an art show out there, and this is kind of like going to a dance performance, because there's really no explanation. You just have to feel it.
Okay. So I'm going to wrap it up here because if there's any questions to be asked, but really this is sort of the theme of my whole presentation right here. And so I just want to present this in a fun way, and I think that Kurt Vonnegut really had something there, and I want to show you that it's scientifically proven. Farting around. See this? So some of you have maybe seen this graph before. So this is a graph. So let's say, like in life, you want to find something out, right? Well, let's say, so this gradient, is that called a gradient? So let's say you want to find something out on a level of, what do you think, 7? So draw a line here, and then, so in order to find out something on the level of 7, you've got to fuck around on a level of 7 to find it out. So if, in fact, if you never, fart around. If you never fart around, or you never find anything out. So that's the moral of my show. So, are there any questions? Have I talked so much that there are just no questions at all? That's fine.
I'll ask you one.
Yeah.
So you're a self-professed introvert, you said earlier in your show. I find all these things you've done, like you put yourself out there, like time and time again. And I guess the question I have is, how does an introvert, how do you teach other introverts to do that? To fart around Put yourself out there, take the risks.
That is the best question I could have ever gotten. So I wouldn't say I would say I'm a closet introvert, but I really love connecting with people. It just gives me this huge dopamine, oxytocin rush. But early on, I was really kind of a hermit, and like I showed before, I found this book in the library. It's like, what do you say after you say hello? Like seriously, I just didn't know how to. I just didn't know. Like I was just tongue-tied all the time. So I found that book, and I tried those things. Like it's like, well, you got to be curious, and I was definitely curious. But how do you implement curiosity if you don't know how to go after it? That was my big problem. So because of those steps, it's like you need to have some drive, and you got to have this you have to practice courage. You kind of have to see it in your mind, like how could I possibly do that, which is really hard. And then you have to want it so bad that the incentive is, is finding this thing out. And so in order to fart around, you have to have fun doing it, and so you have to develop this skill. And I remember early on, I saw somebody who was a great hustler. He was this artist named Richard Posner, and I saw him in a meeting to get this big public sculpture. And there was this. We were in somebody's. Oh, it was the guy that had the. You ever seen ant farms? You know the ant farm? We were in the ant farm factory, and the guy that owned the ant farm, I think his name was Joseph Levin, we were in his office, and he had all these pictures of his family, and Richard didn't care, but he was so smart, because he goes, oh, is this your family? And he starts asking him about, like, is that your daughter? And he totally engages this guy. And I thought, wow, that is just amazing. And actually, I tried it on, and it really does work. Like, you can... So just to, and actually after a while you start going with it, you start really actually being interested in who that person is. So it just takes practice. I mean, it's a learned skill. It really, I believe it is. So thanks for asking that, and I hope it helps somebody. Yes, sir?
Yeah, but while you're farting around, and sometimes when you actually feel like, oh, I'm approaching something that may turn out to be something that, how often do you get like dry wells, where it turns out to be, oh, that was a dead end?
I was pretty sure this was going to be one. I was a nervous wreck. But, gosh, that's a great question. I wouldn't say I work like a wildcatter. I mean, even dead ends, like what you find out all the way to the dead end is so valuable a lot of times. I can't say I ever, sometimes things can get maybe kind of boring and I'll bail, but there was always something along the way that was worth going in the first place.
And then you might come back to some.
Might come back
some
to
other
it.
way.
Cedar Choppers is a perfect example, a book that, a graphic novel that I was encouraged to do. I mean, that's always, that box of those drawings are always there, just kind of like tapping me on the shoulder, like, when are you ever gonna? So yeah, that'd be a great. Yeah.
Is there any place you want to do your sort of traveling exhibit that you haven't done yet? And have you really brought it outside of Texas, or is it just been like a few local communities?
I was going to do one in Chino, California, but it didn't work out. And there was a guy that had been there. He was an Indian. God, I'm so sorry. My mind is so undependable at this age, and I can't remember his name. I would say El Chapo, but that's not it. Anyway, he was a local Indian in the Palm Springs area, and he had lived to be 120 years old. And I went out there and I investigated the area. It was just this barren desert. But anyway, they didn't come up with the resources for it, and I was really excited about that. I would go anywhere. I mean, I'm not interested in cities because there's so many headlights in a city. I get to be sort of the one shiny thing that's going on. And plus, people in small towns are real excited to work with you because, they want to talk about their town, and I want to hear it. And a friend of mine told me when I first started doing this, I haven't done this that many of them, But he said, be sure and go to, like, you really want to get a bead on what's going on in town, go to the black barber shop and get your hair cut. And man, it is the best. It's just like, there's such great gossip in there. These people know, like these folks know what's going on. And they'll really send you to some interesting places. So I'd do one here, if you want me to. I believe you're, oh. Okay, well, anybody else? Yes.
With raising grocery prices, what would you recommend for a $4 hors d'oeuvre?
Oh, gosh.
What did you serve?
Well, I'm not sure what the price of beanie weenies are anymore, but that's what we served at this one. And it, you know, and I wasn't buying napkins, so I was just cutting up old T-shirts. So that's sort of taken care of. We used creek water and boxed wine that was real cheap.
Then you made sangria.
And we made sangria out of it. And yeah, that was, I hated it, but anyway, you have to watch the show to
I've
really
got my
know.
night plan.
But $4, so you'd be amazed how far you can stretch that for a big party.
We have nicer hors d'oeuvres upstairs at our reception.
Oh.
That are more than $4.
So I guess that concludes our show for today. And I want to thank you all so much, particularly you, Riley. Together we did it yourself. So yeah, we have a reception upstairs, and it's all free food.
And there's alcohol.
All right.
So I'm going to pack this stuff up, and I'll see you outside.